Hopefully it's recording the audio too. I'm hoping.
Testing, 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 one and two and three.
Make sure. Da. Okay, here we go. Welcome everybody to a special edition of Mondays with Adam. This is episode number 40, and as you can see me too. And I'm excited to be here with you. I have a very, very special guest with me today. One of my favorite people. Probably met him last year. And I mean, I've met a lot of people over the years. I'm very blessed in that. Um, and this guy has suddenly risen to the top of the list as one of the most interesting and kind and genuine humans I've ever had the privilege to meet this side of heaven, which I'm thankful for that. I would love to introduce you to Mr. Michael Pink. Michael, how are you today, my friend?
Well, Adam, after hearing that introduction, I'm doing really well. Really good. Thank you. It's been a real privilege just to get to know you as well. It's been a special treat. It's kind of one of those things. It's like when you're a kid and you're walking, on through the baseball field and you're kind of cutting through the woods and a little bit of a path and you see something over on the side of the path and you wonder what it is and you go over to it and it's a Snickers bar that's never been opened.
Mm.
Like, and you can have the whole thing to yourself because it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And didn't expect such a treat. And that's what it was like meeting you.
Well, I appreciate that. I do. I've always wanted to be described as candy, so I thank you. Snickers is one of my favorites. Anyways,
That's the image that came to me. A Snickers bar. Got some nuts in it. It's got some, I think it does. Yeah. It's delicious. Anyway,
well, I'm definitely a nut for sure. So I want to start. There's a million ways we could start this, but I would love just for you to take a minute to let us know who you are and kind of where you started and where you are now, and then we'll kind of bounce off of that. However,
sure. Well, you know, I was born in Canada, very early age, and actually kind of came up through three different sets of parents, mothers and things like that. Dropped off at a doorstep when I was 3, dropped off at another one when I was 11, ran away from home to live in the streets of Toronto. Kind of had a bit of, it didn't work out that way, but police had a different idea. But I was coming up a little bit rough, but then it settled down in my teen years. And then when I was about 17, 18 years old, 18, just before my 18th birthday, I was driving a car, my mother's car, through the Rocky Mountains, and I fell asleep at the wheel and
mm,
drove over the Continental Divide, went off a cliff at about 85 miles an hour with a friend of mine. He was also sleeping. And the car just went end over end, like it just sailed through the air. And I thought, this is the first time I've ever flown when I woke up. And I'm just sailing through the air, looking at the trees, wondering what's going to happen next. And then I hit that first boulder and it just flipped all the way down the mountainside. And we didn't have our seatbelts on and we weren't, and I wasn't hurt. He had a couple of small cuts and some stitches. I didn't even have a scratch or a bruise. I had nothing.
wow,
We were like dice in a can going all the way down the mountain. Every window was knocked out. The car was completely destroyed. We thought it was going to explode because it always does in the movies, but it didn't.
wow,
And when it all subsided, we climbed back up to the road. Of course, the car was no longer visible from the road. We were 18 miles from the nearest town, started hitchhiking and got a ride back to town. And it took a bus from Revelstoke, is the town in British Columbia, back to Vancouver where I lived. And on the way back, we couldn't sit together. There just weren't enough, there weren't two seats together on the bus. And we're driving back and I ended up sitting beside this guy he was incredibly old. He must have been like 55, 60, maybe even 65. I don't know. But
mm,
I thought it was old. And he said to me this is the first pivotal point. He said, man, when he heard my story, he said, God must have a plan for your life.
mm,
And two things hit me. Number one, I don't want religion. Get away from me. You're not religious. I don't want it. I was revulsed by that idea.
yeah,
But the second thing that captured me was, but what if God has a plan? Like I interpret it as maybe he wants to hire me for something.
yeah,
Like talk about working for the boss. Like
mm,
that's better than working for the president. Like,
yeah.
and I was thinking, you mean is it possible that God like knows who I am, made me with a purpose, and he actually has something for me to fulfill? Is that
Mm,
possible? And a few weeks later, I found out, I was introduced to him. It's a longer story, and I'll tell it another time. But I did finally come to the Lord on my knees in my bedroom, and I said, God, I'm sorry for living my life for me.
Mm.
Whatever it is you do, would you do that for me now? And I didn't expect anything because I was told nothing would happen. But sure enough, he invaded my room and flooded me. And I was overwhelmed with emotion and joy and tears, and I didn't know what happened to me. And I got up and I ran out the hallway. Nobody was at home, and I was
Mm.
going to jump in the pool off the back deck, but we didn't have a pool. We never had a pool. I don't know what I was thinking. I just had an overwhelming desire to get in water, even though I'd never even heard of water baptism. I was
Wow.
completely unchurched. I ran into the bathroom, started to fill up the tub because I had to get in water, but it was taking too long. So I filled up the sink, and essentially I baptized myself. And I didn't know what I was doing, but I just kept my cup in the water over me and like just doing this because I thought, what did you do and who are you? And I
Yeah.
don't understand you. That was the beginning. That was the beginning. And then I found out that not only does he save you, but he likes to talk to you.
Mm.
He like if you ask him a question, he'll answer it.
Yeah.
I remember saying around that time, I'm 18 years old, and I said, God, what about this thing, sexual temptation? Like, what am I supposed to do with that? I don't understand. What's my thing? And I was completely unchurched, had never read a Bible, and he said to me, Second Corinthians or First or Second Corinthians 10:13. I think it's First Corinthians 10:13. And I didn't know what that was. I didn't have a Bible, but I knew there was one in the guest bedroom. I went to the guest bedroom. I opened it up, and it says, there is no temptation come unto you, but such as is common to man, and God will, with that temptation, make a way of escape.
Mm.
I shut my Bible. My God, he talks to you.
Mm.
And so that began a journey, an intimate journey in a relationship that's been going on since 1973. That's a fair spell.
Yeah.
And the growth in the last 50 years has been amazing. And so I ended up finding myself in a sales career. And this was my thing because people think, oh, I'm called to the mission, or I'm called to be a pastor, or I'm called to whatever. Those are all wonderful, valid callings, but I didn't feel like that. I felt like I was supposed to be in business.
Mm.
And so I got a job as a 19-year-old selling life insurance.
Okay.
And here's what happened. I was a forklift driver, and they went on strike. And the union required us to wear these signs, whatever they're supposed to say, walk back and forth. I couldn't do that. So I went home, got the newspaper, and I saw an ad that forever changed my life. And people watching this might be able to relate to this.
Yeah.
Because the ad said, headline, unlimited income. Subheadline, get paid what you're worth. I thought, my God, I'm rich.
I'll take some of that. Yeah.
How do I get this job before it's gone?
Sign me up.
It was straight commission life insurance sales.
Yeah.
But, I didn't know what that was. I mean, I'd never even heard of life insurance, but it sounded like a good idea to me. I mean, I ran down to that place. I applied for that job, me and a bunch of other people, and we all got hired because it's straight commission. But I so believed in it. In my first week after the training, sold 50 whole life policies to strangers.
Wow.
It was but I was cold calling. My last cold call was at 2:00 in the morning on an Indian reservation on Vancouver Island because I didn't know why it was wrong to call on somebody's door, knock, knock, knock at 2:00 in the morning. I figured I could see the TV was still on, so I figured they're watching TV. We might as well talk business.
Yeah.
And they opened the door and invited me in. So that was the beginning of my sales career. But then I went into selling copiers because I didn't want to have to travel all the time, and that was involving traveling. So I got a job selling copiers. And that's when reality hit me because now I'm calling on businesses. And I struggled. But after a few years, I managed to get up to mediocre. And mediocre meant I was good enough to stay there. Not bad enough to fire, not good enough to win any real awards. Had a couple of spikes where some incredible, miraculous things happened. You go, wow, some great stories I could tell you sometime. And I had some of those, but I didn't have anything consistent. I did that for about 6 years, and then I left that and went into business because I thought, well, I know everything now, and so I'm going to go into business. And boy, did I find out that having a business is not the same as being a salesperson. You need the sales skills without question. You have to have those. I don't care what role you're playing in your business. You need to know how to sell, but you also need to know how to do other things. And I didn't know those things. And within just a few months, about 5 months, I was ended up being hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. I had a 10,000 square foot office warehouse combination, a bunch of staff, a bunch of people, and all that went gone. And
Mm.
I ended up losing absolutely everything. I lost that. I lost my home. I lost my cars. I lost my business, of course. I ended up losing my marriage. My daughter, firstborn and only child, died. It
Mm.
was just the darkest time I could imagine. It happened in that time frame. It's like, and it just went down, down, down. I didn't even know which way was up anymore. It was a very, very difficult time. And I wondered if God could even find use for me anymore because I seemingly had failed at everything.
Yeah.
And it's like now I don't know if anybody's watching this has ever had a few failures. And not everything that happens to you is your fault, but in my case, plenty of it was. I mean, I made some bad choices, and it was very, very costly. And then one day, while sleeping on somebody else's sofa, driving somebody else's car,
Mhm.
having lost my townhouse and my car and my beautiful custom built home, I lost all that, having nothing. Turn on the TV in the morning, and the 700 Club came on, and I wasn't a watcher of that. I was not walking particularly spiritually, but as I watched it, just sort of with one eye open, I saw all of a sudden myself being on the show. I saw my name on the screen. They were interviewing me,
Hmm.
and my eyes went like this, like,
Yeah.
what? And I shut it off, like, what's that? And I went out for a walk in the rain. I said, God, what is it? What is this? Nobody wants to hear from me. Nobody's ever going to, I don't know what is that?
Hmm.
And I griped for about an hour. And then he said to me this, he said, are you tired of feeling sorry for yourself?
Mm.
It's like, well, I was hoping for a hug, but okay.
Yeah.
And so I said, what? So anyway, I did a few things. I started praying for other people that were worse off than me and things like that. And I said, God, what about me? Will I ever be established again?
Hmm.
He said, Second Chronicles 7:17.
Mm.
Well, I didn't know what that said. I ran out to my car, got my Bible, and it says, and as for thee, if you will hearken unto the word of the Lord and basically do what it says, it continues, I will establish. It's a word to Solomon, but it was a direct answer to me. So I said, okay, Lord, I held up my Bible. I said, I will read this book and I will tell everybody to do what it says.
Hmm.
But you got to do what it says you do. Because if you don't do what it says that you do, I
Hmm.
can't tell anybody.
Yeah.
He laughed so hard it started raining. And like, I got you. I don't worry about you. I got that covered, Michael.
Yeah.
And so that was a turning point for me. And I had some miracles that happened that day, incredible stories. Fast forward, I end up coming down to the United States. I'm down in the United States, and I'm because I was living in Canada. I got a job selling copiers. It was the one thing I knew I didn't want to do, and I knew I didn't want to do it because I hadn't succeeded in it.
Mm.
Yet the Holy Spirit, again, I didn't even ask him. Sometimes he doesn't ask your opinion. I'm just driving I-40 through Nashville, and there's a building on the side near Demumbery, and he says, that's where you're going to work. And I looked at it and thought, what's that? And I saw, it's a copier dealer. I don't want to sell copiers, God. I want to do something for you. I want to do something great. And he said, yeah, go work here.
Hmm.
So I went there and applied, and they said, well, we have a position in Murfreesboro if you want that. And I took it. And on my first day, here's where this begins to change. Okay. I remember I'm standing at the car saying, God, I'll do what it says you do, but you got to do what it says you do. Now here it is, a year or so later. And the vice president says to me, Michael, here's what we expect for every 4 or 5 companies you demonstrate your equipment to. We expect 1 sale because the national average is 1 out of 4. We expect that from you.
Yeah.
No sales your first month, 2 sales your second month, and 4 sales a month thereafter, meaning they wanted 6 sales in my first 90 days. Well, okay. I came home and my wife said to me, what's bugging you? I said, huh, because I had gotten remarried recently. She
Hmm.
said, what's bugging you? And I said, well, they're asking me to sell 1 out of 4. She says, so what's the problem? I said, that means they're asking me to accept a 75% failure rate. Going to where your folks live up there in corn country, right?
Yep.
So what farmer plants 4 rows of corn and prays to God that only 1 of them comes up?
Yeah.
And I picked up my Bible and I said, I'm going to find in here principles and strategies in here. Said, and I'm going to go to the book of Proverbs and I'm going to find things in here. I'm going to apply them directly to sales. And instead of selling 1 out of 4, I intend to sell 1 out of 1.
Mm.
She thought I was a little bit optimistic. The next day I reported for duty at the branch office and he said, son, what are your goals? Have any? I said, yes, I intend to sell 1 out of 1. And he was like, I hired a nut. I hired an absolute loser. But they'd already printed my business cards and I'm not on a
Too
salary.
late
So
now.
there you go. Now, here's what happened 90 days later, all the salespeople from all the branches, I was in a branch office, plus the head office, gather at a country club where your results are projected on a screen behind you. And you, as a salesperson, have to get up. Every one of us had to do this and give the following things. I made X number of calls, gave me X number of demonstrations,
Yeah.
X number of sales, X number of dollars. And when it was my turn, I said, I've been here 90 days. I'm pleased to report X number of calls. I've done 22 presentations, and I'm pleased to report that I also have 22 sales.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 3.5 times the number nobody had ever hit, and it was 1 out of 1.
Wow.
Because what had happened was I found incredible things in the Bible. I went from mediocre to straight up, just like chook. And all I did was learn some things. It wasn't tactics, it wasn't pressure, it wasn't any of that nonsense. It was a whole new way of viewing the world and operating within it. They thought I was lucky. I stayed in that position for the year, set a record for the most number ever sold in a year, even though I was in the territory less than 11 months, went to Europe on vacation, did a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so the vice president, or excuse me, the president at the Christmas party says, Michael, we've never had anybody do this before. Like, we don't understand this thing. He said, you got any ideas on how we can get the other guys in the company to do this? I said, no. This is at the Christmas party. I said, no, I don't have any ideas. I have the solution. When you want to know what it is, you give me a call. So he took a couple steps back and called me.
Yeah.
And that first Monday in January, I was the new sales manager. They gave me a team of 5.
Okay.
And 10 months later, their results were up 430%.
Wow.
430% sales. That's real money, real cash.
Yep.
So they relieved me of that job and said, okay, now you're the trainer for the entire company. I only tell you that to say that when I had set the record in the year, working less than anybody else, they thought I was from Mars. They thought all kinds of things about me. They couldn't understand, like, how is he able to do this? When they let me be the manager over one team, there's others, team of 5, they wanted to see if it was in fact transferable.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it just because he's some kind of weird anomaly, out in the outlier kind of thing?
Yeah.
Well, it turns out no. And so that proved that what I was learning worked incredibly well. And then I ended up coming down to I got out of that, did a few other things, ended up starting my own sales training company, and have done incredibly well. And probably most recently, it's not that recent, but in 2015, a friend of mine said, Michael, I got a company with 12 agents, 9 of them had quit, 3 of them were looking for a job. I'm thinking of closing it down. Do you want to take a look and see what you think? I took a look at it. I said, sure, I can help you.
Yeah.
So that was in June and July, heading into July of 2015. And I helped him for the last part of 2015. And we went from about to shut it down to a 930% increase.
Wow.
930 in those last 6 months, making a 7-figure profit.
Mm-hmm.
He said, please stay on with me for 2 more years. I want to get on the Inc. 500 list. We did, and I did, and it did. It was number 16, 1-6.
Wow.
On the Inc. 500 fastest growing privately held companies in America. So that was because he knew me, and he said, like, do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how unconventional it is. And when I tell the story quick, like I just done, some people might think, oh, well, he's teaching them like some kind of slick stuff. There was nothing slick. There was no pressure. It's nothing like that. There's just, there are secrets. What I think is, this is the way God works. Mm-hmm. And my job was to find out how he does things and just cooperate with that. Mm-hmm. And when I cooperate with that, it includes work, it includes effort, it includes a lot of practical activities. But with each activity, there's still a certain amount of skill and nuance and messaging that goes into that can make it, very successful or not. And he taught me those things, and I learned them, and I've been teaching them ever since. So in a nutshell, and that's an awfully big, more like a coconut shell, just for the
yeah.
That's my story, and I'm sticking with it.
It's pretty juicy. I love it. There's so many different ways we could go from there. I grew up in the church world, and a lot of people that have heard my podcast have known me or know my family. That's how they know us. We grew up in the church world, and then I realized very early on that I was called into the ministry as well, but I didn't necessarily want to go be a typical preacher or an evangelist or a minister of music at a church somewhere, and that was it. there was like a business anointing on me also. But that skill that I had acquired through the exposure of the great men and women that I've been around, of the ability to communicate effectively, to declare a message to win somebody's heart in order to get them to engage with what you're presenting. I learned that that was a useful skill in the business world, because that's what sales is really about, is connecting to people
Yep.
effectively, the message that you present. And so even today, when I have a sales call or a consultation with a potential client, my attitude is, if I get the meeting, just like you're one of one, I'm going to get the deal. So I'm not going in it with the approach of losing or hoping that the law of averages may work in my favor today, but that I'm going to be
Great.
effective. And I think that's important. The attitude that you talked about is the Bible calls it in the book of Hebrews the gift of faith. It's something that God gives us to operate in, and I believe all believers, and whether you're a believer or you're not, you walk in faith in some area of your life. You believe that the car you got in is going to start. You believe the chair you just sat in blindly is going to hold your butt up. Like, you believe in something and you step out into it. So talk to me a little bit about that attitude that the Lord taught you to have, that confidence. Where did that come from, and how do you think that helped and worked in your life?
Well, when I said, okay, I'm going to do what I don't want to do because he told me to do it, the first thing to do is, yeah, I trusted his word. And the first thing I found was Proverbs 3, verse 3 and 4, when it says to
Mm-hmm.
bind mercy and truth around your neck and write them on the tablet of your heart, and you'll find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and the sight of man. I wanted favor. I wanted, in a competitive situation, for the customer to look at me and say, I don't know what it is, but I like this guy.
Yeah.
I wanted the favor from them, and I wanted the favor from God. And so I knew I had to find out, what do you mean? How do I bind mercy around my neck? How do I bind truth around my neck? And so one of the tips I want to give people is, first of all, this deals with your own heart, because you're supposed to write it on your heart, which means I'm never going to try to get somebody to buy something that's not in their best interest. Which means, in order to find out what's in their best interest, I need to ask questions. Which means, if I want to ask questions, I need to ask the right questions. Which means, if I want to find the right questions, is there a model in the Bible that you find them? The
Mm.
answer is yes. There is a questioning strategy in the book of Numbers, 7 questions Moses had to have answered before invading Canaan. Like, wow, that's a profound questioning strategy. I step into that with the expectation that it's going to work, with
Mm.
the expectation that because it's in his word, that I just expected whatever he said was true because he said it was, and I
Yeah.
believed him. And so I would do things like that. I would study that and say, oh, wait a minute, that's a powerful strategy, and I would believe it. And then the role of faith, generally speaking, when I did my first book, The Bible Incorporated, this book here, I wrote this book, which is now in paperback. I don't have it in the leather anymore, but we did this book. I self-published it, and I
Mm.
ordered 25,000 of those books when I had no ability to pay for them. They were about $100,000. They were leather with brass corners and gold edges and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I had no way of paying for that. But I felt like the Lord said, gave me the okie dokie to do this. When I called the printer and I ordered 25,000, they said, are you sure you want that many? 80% of the books published in America never sell more than 5,000 copies over their lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And that's if they're an established publisher with a distribution outlet. Are you sure you want that many? And I never knew those facts.
Yeah.
I'm on the phone. I said, well, hang on a second. No, no, we're good. And I ordered them.
Yeah.
I didn't have the money to pay for the shipping, let alone the books.
Mm.
This was faith. But I felt like he said to do the book. And so I did. And so all I had to do, my thinking was, I just had to sell enough books between that day and the day that 30 days after they were delivered to pay for them.
Mm.
And that was my simplified strategy. But I was trusting God in that process. And I went into places with that expectation. I want to tell you this. You have got to, if you want to do well, you got to carry it on the inside of you. I went to the first place I went to was a big distributor up in Michigan,
Mm.
a company called Spring Arbor. It's now owned by Ingram Books. And I went there and I wanted them to I was pre-selling my books. And I had my first call I didn't even have the book. I had a picture of the book, a mock-up drawn up and whatever. And I took it to them. And the guy said to me when I got in, he said, how'd you get in here? And I said, well, I made an appointment. He said, but how'd you get by? We don't meet with people like you. No offense, he said, but you're just a guy.
Right.
You're not a publishing company. You have no distribution outlet. You're nobody. I'm sorry. You need to go. I said, no, you don't understand something. And I started telling him about the book. He said, listen, and I said, the minimum order was 1,000 copies. That's what I said. He said, let me explain something to you. Thomas Nelson, the biggest publisher in the world, or Christian publisher in the world, when we buy their books, we buy 1 or 2 cases, 24 or 48 books, period. And then if the demand gets up, we'll buy more. So we're not going to buy 1,000 books from a guy who nobody knows. So sorry, see ya. And I said, you don't understand. Because I was so full of expectation. I said, this book, and I only had a picture of it, this book is going to be a bestseller. It's going to be featured on national television programs all over the country. It's going to be hit everywhere. And store owners are going to see it on TV. They're going to see the interviews, and they're going to want to get that book, and they're going to call you, but you're not going to have them. And by the way, you should have them. And if you're going to get them, the minimum order is 1,000. If you want a really good price, you got to buy 5,000. He bought 1,000. Bought 1,000, and then I drove to the next one in Iowa, in a cornfield, Riverside Bible, to the same thing, and they said the same thing to me, and I walked out, and they bought 1,000. And then I went from there to Appalachian, and they bought 5,000, just 1,000, 1,000, and 5,000. I didn't know that wasn't normal. I thought that's how you should do business because I had no clue.
Yeah.
But what I had was a belief and a conviction, because you see, your beliefs come out of what you see as possible. What you see comes out of what you think on. What you think on comes out of what your input is. So what are you taking in? What are you feasting your eyes on and your ears on? What are you breathing in? Because that formulates your thoughts, and your thoughts eventually coalesce into an image. What you see. Do you see destruction? Do you see failure? Do you see rejection? Or do you see acceptance? Do you see success? What do you see? Because what you see, when you see it, when it takes shape on the inside, that is the same as conception. An actual conception takes place. And when that conception happens, then there's a bit of time for it to work its way down the birth canal before it actually materializes. You got to have that. And I went through all those steps and just believed it. But the belief, the belief then requires behavior. And that behavior was, no, I'm driving and I'm going to tell you. And when they said no, I said, no, you're wrong. You don't understand.
Yeah.
You don't understand. And I didn't know, fortunately, that I was going completely contrary to the way anything has ever been done in that world, the publishing world. I had no clue. I just thought this is how it should be. And I saw the image on the inside of me. I saw the result on the inside of me. I saw the way I thought it should work. And apparently that once I could see it, then they were able to see it. Once they were able to see it, they were able to purchase it. And that's what they did. And so I would urge the people watching this, listen very, very carefully. Watch your input, because that affects what you think on. What you listen to and what you look with your eyes will affect drastically what you think on. What you think on begins to coalesce into an image, your imagination. It begins to take shape. And what you finally see is what you will ultimately develop.
Yeah.
Be careful what you see with your mind's eye. And when you see it and you coalesce it, and it's like, now I see how this can happen. Belief comes. And once belief comes, you hold on to it and you take action. You take the corresponding action, and the results will follow. And when the results follow, the rewards come with the results. Wow. So that's the process I go through. And I hope that's helpful to you guys, to your team.
That's amazing. So one of the things, that's awesome. There's so much there that we could talk about again. But there are a lot of people that have had an idea for a business, and they launched out, and maybe they entered into a very competitive space, whether that's a restaurant or a heating and cooling company, any kind of service-based industry. There's a lot of, just because you don't have this huge innovative idea doesn't mean you can't be successful. You can be in a very competitive market and still find that favor that we've just talked about. And if your belief system, and then your values, and then the execution of those things in the marketplace are what they should be, then you're going to do better than those around you. You're going to rise to the top, the cream to the top. But there's a lot of people that have started something and then they failed.
Yeah.
So what would you say to somebody who had big ideas, big dream, big vision, took a massive risk, started a business, but then ran into the obstacles, no matter if it was their fault or whatever, the market's fault, the economy's fault, whatever they want to blame? What would you say to that person right now? Is there hope for them? How would you encourage them?
Okay, first of all, I've done that. I ran into the wood chipper. I know what that's about. Done it a couple times, so I get that. Number two, do not blame the economy or the other guy, period. Okay? It happened. I made some mistakes. I made some poor choices. I wasn't informed enough. I went with my gut. I went with something that whatever it was, don't waste time on it. Don't waste time on regret. Learn from it
Mm-hmm.
and learn this. It's always better to learn from somebody else's mistake than it is learning from your own.
Mm-hmm.
You'll remember yours better, but you'll save yourself a lot of heartache and a lot of money if you can learn from somebody else's mistake. Very important takeaway. You need to do that. So, but I don't know anybody who's been successful that hasn't had their back against the wall, hasn't felt like they were being crucified. I don't know anybody that's ever made it big that didn't take a beating on the way. I don't know anybody that's made it flawlessly through life without, having some missteps along the way. So it happens, okay? And you learn from it and you get back up. But like, for example, you said something about the AC business as an example and a competitive business. Well, I had a client in the AC business in Tennessee, and they were a wholesaler. They provided a certain brand of air conditioning to contractors who in turn sold them to the consumers.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that kind of thing. And so it's a very competitive business. And I went to them and I said, well, actually, the president said to me, Michael, we've been trying to crack this big account for 6 years. We call on him twice a month. We've taken him and his crew out for breakfast and lunch. I've been to his house for dinner. He's been to my house for dinner. We've gone to movies together with our spouses, but we've never got a nickel's worth of business in 6 years. You got any suggestions? Now, here's where it comes down to, Adam. Now we're talking about skill. See, belief is important, but there's a certain knowledge, a certain skill. If you can learn certain important skills, there's high value in skill. You got to have skill. And so this skill was, I said, sure, there's 7 questions I want you to ask when you go call on the guy. Now, he looked at me like I just suggested he sacrifice a chicken in the parking lot. What do you mean 7 questions? I said, they're not really 7 questions, they're 7 topics. And he said, well, can you write out the questions, which I did. And so I wrote out the questions for him. I have them here someplace. And he went with those 7 questions, which were probably a menu of 50 questions. And he asked this guy that he's been calling on twice a month for all those years. But this time, because he had a technique or a strategic line of questions, it wasn't about the wife and the kids and the football game and the sports team and politics. It was about strategic issues relative to the business, which, by the way, I didn't tell him this yet. I found in the Bible in the 13th chapter of Numbers, because they were the same questions Moses insisted on having answered before they would invade Canaan, because they knew when they were going to go into Canaan, they would be met with resistance, which meant there would be risk. But if successful, there would be reward. When you think about those things, everybody in business knows I get resistance to my ideas. I'm putting a lot at risk, but boy, if I'm successful, there's reward. So I thought, well, what's the implication of those 7 questions? I wrote out the questions, never told him where it came from at that point. He went out on Wednesday and asked a bunch of questions. Thursday, the guy called back and said, hey, can you give me a quote? On Friday, that client that they've been talking to for 6 years placed an order for $60,000. $60,000.
Wow.
And the owner was shocked. And he called an emergency sales meeting, called 18 salespeople in from 3 states, put them in a room, put me in front of them, held up that piece of paper, wherever it is. He said, I don't know what this is, and I don't know why it works. I want every one of you using it, and Michael's going to tell you how to do it.
Wow.
Now, they looked at me like, oh, boy, some guy who'd never been in our business is going to tell us stuff. They weren't too receptive, but they were obligated. So guess what? I trained them how to do this in the beginning of April. This was the end of March when it happened. The preceding April, they had done 1.2 million in sales. They were hoping to do 1.3 this April, but they were required to use this form and everybody they called on. At the end of the month, they said, how'd it go? Well, they didn't do 1.2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. They did 1.7 million.
Wow.
Simply by, now listen, we didn't invoke faith or belief or some of the things you and I have been talking about. I simply provided them with a skill set that was previously unknown to them, not just asking questions, which people are waking up to now, but asking the right strategic questions in the right way, in the right sequence, and asking them, and then letting it transfer over to the customer. And so they had done 1.7, at which point I said to the president, would you like to know where I got? Actually, he said, where did you get that from? He thought I might have learned it from Zig Ziglar or somebody. And I said, no, I learned it from Moses. I probably should have said it a little differently. He's like, Moses? Are you crazy? And I explained where I got it from. 13th chapter of the book of Numbers. There's the 7 questions. And I thought, that's where it came from. And I know he looked at me and thought, that's really strange. But we just added an extra $500,000 this month. That's crazy. And so I'm going to tell you, people, look at when you fail in business, welcome to the club. Okay, now you failed. Good. You got that out of the way. Good. Done. Get back up. Don't blame, oh, the economy turned, it was
Yep.
COVID. Forget all that. Forget it. Okay. You're going to get back up and say, God, show me how to get out of this thing.
Mhm.
Show me what's the way. And one of the things, besides his favor, besides walking in faith, one of the things, he doesn't exempt you from learning skills.
Mhm.
How do you communicate? How do you message? How do you advertise? How do you promote? How do you sell? What questions do you ask? How do you present? What is a value proposition? There are key elements in the sales process, in the marketing process, that cooperate with the way that God made people. And
Yeah.
when you find out how he's wired us and you cooperate with that, which is what you do so amazingly well, that's why I love what you do. You it's such a God-centered conversational approach to marketing. It's brilliant. I loved it when I first heard it. It's like, my God, this guy has got it going on. So that's the beginning of that. No, you do. You absolutely do. That's
Thank
why
you.
I said I want to help you any way I can because I believe in what you're doing. I know it's effective.
Oh,
There are
appreciate
other skills that people can learn, and I just touched one of them. But yeah, you get back up and keep going, and you will overcome. You might get knocked down 2 or 3 times. I can't remember how many times I've got knocked down on the way. Oh, okay, that's another thing I don't need to do anymore. Okay, get back up, and after a while, you say, "Hey, I've been in business now for 20 something years. Okay, I've kind of figured some things out. I'm not making those mistakes
it. Mhm.
now, and I'm upward and onward." So anyway,
You
that's my
know,
answer.
one thing I've encouraged people in the past, and I think it's valid, is I'm a big believer that we should play offense, not just defense. And so if something doesn't work, if a play doesn't work and you don't score, that doesn't mean you quit the game.
Right.
We're in the first quarter still. We still have a lot of game left. And just because that play did not work, that was your idea, you drew it up, you practiced it maybe, you tried to implement it and it failed. And a lot of us, I think we put our own ideas together on paper and we believe in it so much and we think the market is going to respond to it in the way in which we believe it will, but then we put it in the game and
Yeah.
it didn't happen. We fumbled, they intercepted. It did not go like we thought it would. And at that moment, I think a lot of people they quit. So maybe they start a business, they start a restaurant. Nobody likes their food. And all of a sudden they're like, well, my family loved it and my best friends all said I should do this. I thought the world was going to accept it. Well, maybe that's not the right path for you. Maybe there's other opportunities. And I think that we live in the land of opportunity. We talk about America, the land of opportunity. People come from all over the world just to step foot in here to try to get a piece of
Hmm.
that freedom that we so take advantage of a lot of times. Um, there's so many other ways. And I think if we stay focused on our failure, then we miss out the opportunity to see another path. And I think if you go throughout scripture, you can see David in his life where that happened. I mean, he was anointed king over Israel and then ended up hiding in a cave from Saul with not necessarily the path forward that he thought it was going to be. But if you stay faithful, if you're willing and you're obedient and you don't quit and you're always open to the opportunities that can be rather than focusing on what was, I think that's when things start moving in our lives. And that's when I believe that's when we start seeing God's hand begin to work. And as we work with him using those skills that he teaches us through his word and through the people that he places around us, then his power is going to enforce as we move, he moves with us. It's
That's
not we're
right.
moving alone. It's not
That's
like
right.
go do it on your own and report back to me. The Lord, I believe, wants to work with us in very practical ways in business and in life. And I know you've probably seen that in your life and even through when you take a step out of faith and you show people 7 questions that they need to ask their clients or their potential clients and these will work for you, that's a step of faith that you're stepping out on that word
Yeah.
and people are trusting what you said to be true. And so
Hmm.
there is that moment where you're like, all right, here it is. But I believe that there's so much opportunity for all of us, and just because one path didn't work doesn't mean we quit and throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they used to say.
Well, remember what it says in Proverbs. It says a righteous man falls 7 times, but he
Hmm.
gets back up again. It implies two things. It implies number one that yeah, he's gonna have a few failures along the way, but the righteous guy gets back up and he gets back up and he keeps coming. I
Hmm.
used to say it's not over until I say it's over, and I don't say it's over. So you got to just keep on going. It's like when you advertise on Facebook or YouTube or wherever it is you want to Instagram, wherever it is you want to advertise. And people do this all the time. They run an ad spend, a few $100 or whatever, and oh, I didn't make any sales. My advertising doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, actually, advertising does work. Why do you think there's billions of dollars spent probably on a daily basis in advertising? Because it actually does work, but maybe your ad didn't. And
Right.
maybe there's a reason. Maybe it's your ad, maybe it's your product, maybe whatever it is. But rather than say, forget advertising, it doesn't work. No, find out what the issue is. It could be the actual offer, which is a core thing. Do I have something people want? Going back to your point, my mother liked my food. My kids said they liked the food, but I don't know if anybody else likes it. It's got to be something people want, and there's a lot of other issues. So yeah, you want to have something that there's some demand for, that people actually want. And
Mhm.
then if you've got that, then it's you work on your messaging and you work on creating demand and all those other things. And if you work on it, you'll perfect it and get better and better and better. And you will get that response. And in the process, as you're doing that, you become somebody different
Mm.
because you struggled. And it's like that. It's like that old caterpillar that finally shakes off the cocoon and becomes a butterfly. Like, holy smokes, now I'm floating on the air, sting like a bee, float like a butterfly.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to happen for people. Like you just have to keep moving forward and not let disappointment and frustration change your perspective, which is back to your point earlier. It's what you see.
Yep, yep.
I
In
encourage,
here.
yeah, I encourage people, like if you listen throughout all my ridiculous podcasts, one of my biggest driving forces every day, I surround myself with positive positive things. I listen to positive music. I listen to peaceful music. When I'm working, I'm listening to peaceful music. My environment is controlled because I realize what I allow to come this way to me is going
Right,
to affect
input.
what comes out of me.
That's right.
And
That's
so
right.
I think that's so important. If you're listening to this and you feel like your life is a massive noise, you don't have any clarity, you feel like you can't hear clearly, you don't know what the next steps are. I believe the first step is to get quiet and just to begin to listen to that still small voice and to really focus on what it is, not only what God put in your heart to do or what you feel like you need to do. And a lot of people say, well, I don't know what that means. I don't know what God put anything in my heart. Well, what your desire is. I mean, I believe the Lord gives us the desire of our heart, not just because I want a new car, he's going to give me a new car, but he plants that seed of desire that causes us to go a particular direction. And I
Yeah.
believe as we focus on that, I believe the Lord will speak to us like he did to you.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think that there's so much potential. What do you think? What would you, obviously, as technology has advanced, and I mean, you grew up in the business world when, it was, I guess we would consider that old school. And a lot of people are from the old school and struggling with maybe some advancements with technology and feeling like they can stay ahead of their competition based on maybe they don't understand how digital marketing works. They don't understand how to connect to people online. What would you say to somebody who's kind of in that old school mentality and they're trying to learn this new way? What do you think the best approach is? How, because I know you're always sending me things about check out this new, theory and this new way of doing things. And it's based on all these data points that people have learned online. What would you tell somebody who struggles with technology, who wants to be effective in the marketplace today, but doesn't know how to start?
Well, first of all, you don't have to be the tech expert, but the results that it generates, if they're results that you want, you either you either need to learn it if you're a one man person or a one woman show, but I would say you contract with somebody who that's their area of expertise, and that person will get more done for you in a day than you'll get done in a month.
Mm,
And even though that day might be a little bit pricey, it's far less than it is to spend a month trying to figure it out yourself and then botching it for the next 6 months until you work it out. Find
right.
somebody who knows what the heck they're doing and do that. And then you stay abreast of that. You say, I need to learn the trends. I need to find out what's actually working. I like to keep abreast of the facts of the trends that are going on in the marketplace and say, oh, okay, well, people are actually tuning into this particular social platform. I may or may not like that platform, but if that's where the folks are, if that's where the game is, I'm going to go over there and put my fishing pole in that pond. And
Hmm.
so you need to, in my opinion, keep yourself aware and informed. You don't have to master the strategy. You don't have to master, excuse me, the technology, but you do need to be aware, like, okay, I see this is how things are being done. And then find somebody, like, for example, like you. You are so savvy and you know so many things about, especially social media and social marketing. but much more than that. But that's just one area.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, hey, Adam, what about this? What about this? Because I see something, I go, there it is, SOS, shiny object syndrome. And I go, that looks cool. And you could say, yeah, that was cool about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But let me tell you how to do it now. And so it's really good to have somebody that can be in your circle of influence who knows that realm that you trust.
Mm.
And I will say this: when I first met you, I thought Eric Beck and
Mm.
foundersfire.com, I thought he is one lucky guy to have you as a friend. I mean, I really seriously thought that. I envied him. I thought, man, I wish I had a friend like you. I did. I did. I thought because you know stuff and you reek integrity, like and you can be completely trusted. Because
Yeah.
nobody goes out and says. I mean, I had one friend of mine that had a business card. He was in the drywall business, and he said his business card said, "We may not be very good, but we're slow." Which was a joke, but
Yeah.
that's what he put on his card. And so the thing is, people always say, "Hey, we're the best, we're this and that." And he's like, "Oh, but can you actually deliver?
Yeah.
You deliver." Was it 92 million people,
Yeah.
respondees in a
Yeah.
year or whatever?
Yeah.
That's dozens more than mine. I mean, dozens, like millions of dozens.
It's wild. It's people ask me all the time, like, well, how can you do that for everybody? And I can I can teach the principles of what I did, and I can show you how I did it. And I'll open up the toolbox and let everybody know it. There's no magic here. It was just being aware of where you're at. And I think self awareness is an amazing trait, especially in the sales conversation as you're communicating with anybody you're trying to do business with. You need to be aware of who they are and what makes them tick. It's not about us and what we're doing, it's about them and making the customer very important in the transaction because they are important in the transaction. It's not just
Yeah,
about our product
yeah,
and making them feel like it's their decision almost rather than um, it's us forcing them to do anything. And I think with our culture, um, there's a lot, people are tired of these classic, pressure sales approach, showing up at a car lot and just getting bombarded by all these guys who want to shove a car down your throat. And rather than trying to listen to what your needs are, they just put their bottom line on you. They need to sell 20 cars this month and they're trying to get you to be number 18 and they need you to be 18 today because they told their sales manager that they would get another one by Friday. It is Thursday and they are nervous. And so
right.
rather than and we all know you want to make money. Like every business wants to make money. If you didn't go into business to make money, then you're a charity. You're like a weird charity that doesn't donate anything other than to your kids or something, and that's it. So we go in to make money, but it's also the focus is okay. I want to make money, but I need to provide value to people. I need to make sure I'm listening to the needs of people and giving them what they want. And do you feel like that type of approach throughout your sales? I mean, you've trained thousands and thousands of people. What do you feel like the best way to communicate whatever, because the product could be whatever, but it's the interaction. Do you think that that's where the magic happens or where the
Yeah, it is. I'll give you an example. I had a gentleman from Australia. His name is Mark Reynolds, lives in Australia. Um, a blue collar genius. He could fix anything with his hands. He spent his life fixing things, and then in the automotive business, and then he worked his way up into supervisory position. But he was always the guy that could do it with his hands. Me, I get messed up. I do not do good with spatial relationships and mechanical things.
yeah.
But this was his strength. He was not good, in his own words, at selling. He'd never done anything like that. He had zero interest in that.
Mm-hmm.
But he, I think, was working in some job, and it was a kind of a maintenance related thing. And they were closing down, and they phased him out. Well, he lived in an area where there weren't that many opportunities, but he had a family, so he had to get a job. And the only job he said he could find was a job in sales, something he had never done. He's
Mm.
probably in his 40s at the time, and he got a job selling cars. It's the only job he could find.
Mm.
And it was like, oh gosh. And he said, he told me, I had a testimonial on my website, but he tells a story in there where they were trying to get him, as well as all the other salespeople, to cram people or into cars that they didn't want and they couldn't afford
Hmm.
using some foursquare thing, the strategy they had.
Yeah.
He called it a stupid, the way he put it, strategy that they were forced to do, but he wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
He called me and he spent a big amount of money and got my online course from Selling Among Wolves without joining the pack. And because, and this is important, because he was so green, like 40-ish, never
Yeah.
sold in his life, never been anywhere like that. Communication was not a strong suit. He took it like the Bible in a sense. He like, I do everything it says in here. He saw the negotiating secrets of Paul. He learned it. He saw the Moses questioning strategy. He learned it. The motivational secrets of the Ten Commandments. He learned it. How to win the battle for the heart based on the Canaanite conquest. He learned it. He did all these things. And he said it wasn't long before he went from nothing to the number one salesman. And once he hit that position, he was number one in the company for 18 months in a row.
Wow.
And he never did the things that they told him to do at all. And so what he learned was, he said, I believe that God didn't put me on this beautiful earth to cram people into things they didn't want and for money they didn't have. He said, I just didn't believe that's why he put me here. And so he wanted to help people. So he learned how to. He still had to learn some strategy. How do you find out? How do you do it? Hence the questioning strategy. How do you create trust? I teach you create trust this way. Jesus, it said, I mean, we are asked whether people watching this believe in Christ or not, it's their gain or loss. It's up to them. But the point is, the expectation is that we would trust him. That's the requirement. Trust him. Okay. So is that reasonable that he would ask us to trust him? That God would say, I want you to trust you. Is that reasonable?
Yeah.
Well, how did he live his life in such a way that we would be inclined to trust him and held accountable for our decision? I mean, was he a drunkard? Was he a womanizer? Did he have sex with children as other religious leaders have in other religions? Was he that kind of guy? No. Did he go bankrupt? No. What did he live? Well, the Apostle Paul sums up the life of Christ in 7 very powerful points when he says, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who, number one, thought it not robbery to be equal with God.
Mm-hmm.
He considered himself of no reputation. He took on the form of a servant. He humbled himself, even became obedient even to the point of death, even dying on a cross. And there are 7 steps in there. And when you look at those 7 steps, you think, wait a minute. So he was complete. He humbled himself. That's humility. That's easy. Mm-hmm. But he thought it not robbery to be equal with God. In other words, he thought, I know who I am.
Yeah.
And he was completely confident there. So you want to create trust, for example. Mm-hmm. Confidence becomes very important. I know what I have. It may or may not be right for you, but I know who I am. I don't need you to fulfill my life or do anything for me. I don't need you to make my quota. This is what I have, and it's the best thing it's, for you, period. Or if it is, okay. And of course, when Jesus, it was. And so you look at that and say, how do I gain confidence? What are the ways that you gain confidence? And there are several. I actually have a 10-step thing on how to deliberately and consciously create or build confidence, that you do. That for me, the number one thing is I worship God. I spend time with him, spend time in his word, and that builds me up. That's sort of number one, okay? Yep. But then there are other things. You look at your own self-image. Like, how do I see myself? Here's a problem people have. You ready? It's old. It's been around since, well, forever probably. But like in Numbers 13 and 14, we find out the spies that went into the promised land to check it out, because Moses sent these 12 guys there. Yep. 10 of them came back and said, now catch this, very important. We were grasshoppers in our own sight, and thus we were in theirs. They saw giants in the land, but what they said is, we saw ourselves a certain way, so therefore we were perceived that way. See, a Chihuahua doesn't have that problem. Right. Chihuahua sees himself as like a raging lion. He'll attack any German Shepherd fearlessly, right? He doesn't care if it's a pit bull. Get out of my way. I'll tear you apart. I'll tear your ears off. The Chihuahua will go nuts.
Yeah.
Right. And so your confidence, you have to say, well, how do you change that image that you have? Because there are 4 lies that people believe. There are 4 things that you have to, I call them pathogens. There are the lies that we believe, the things that we fear, the pain that we carry, and the image that we bear. And those 4 things will do more to determine your outcome in life than anything I know. And you have to recognize, what are the lies that I believe? And if you don't know what they are, because you do, You do, I do. We all have certain things that we believe that aren't true. And if we knew what they were, we wouldn't do them anymore. So what you do
Mm,
is what I did. I said, Lord, this is where I started. I said, show me the lie that I believe about you and me.
mm,
I prayed that one day, quietly in the living room, in front of the fireplace. Snow. I was up in Ohio, actually, in Akron, winter day. And I just asked him that. And I said, what is the lie that I believe about us? Because I figured any lies I believe are messing me up. And
mm,
just like that, a video began to play in my head. And I saw a picture of a lion, big masculine lion, walking through the savannah. Boom, boom, boom. And behind him was this cub. The cub looked like he'd been playing in the pit of a auto shop. He had grease on it, dirty paws and
mhm.
messy, dirty. And he was following after the lion, nipping at the lion's back leg, thinking, I'm desperately wanting your attention and your affection, and I'm afraid that if I get it, you might kill me, but I want it bad enough that I'm going to take a chance anyway.
Mm,
But I'm afraid of you. And I saw the little cub trying to do that, but yet fearful and seeing himself as dirty. And I said, wow, that's how I relate to you? And that's a lie? Lord, what's the truth? And the truth was, I saw the same movie play and the same cub. Only difference was the cub was spotlessly clean and he was carried tenderly in the mouth of the lion. And he was completely peaceful and all was good. And so I thought, oh, that's how you see us. And that's what's true. Wow. I'm not this person that doesn't deserve things. It's not even about deserving, but it's just like you're lavishing it on me. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to take it. But I didn't know that because I
mm,
thought it was all performance based and I've screwed up and I've messed up and and oh God, please, I'm coming to you, but please don't kill me. And it's like that's you believe in a lie. I'm not like that. I don't want to kill you. I love you.
mm.
Oh my God. And so he showed that to me vividly. Now, that's just one example. Those are lies that we believe.
Yeah.
And there's things that you fear. Oh, okay, there's pains that we carry. I have a few pains, I don't think I have them now, but I've had them, buried my wife, I buried my daughter, I've lost everything. Those things were painful at the time. And if you don't deal with them, those pains that you carry become very hard in places and weeds go up around them and bad things happen. And so there are certain things that pains that you carry. And so I said, Lord, what are the pains that I'm carrying that I'm not even aware of? And he showed me. Oh my gosh. And the things I fear, the things I fear sometimes greatly have come upon me. And the image you bear, like, well, the image, I see myself or I have seen myself at this level.
Mhm,
And he's like, that's not true. That's not how I see you.
mm.
You're in Christ. I made you a new creation, a new creature. And you begin to see yourself as a person with great potential, great possibility, who has an unlimited ability to learn, an unlimited ability to gain skills and to gain favor and to gain wisdom. You can't get too much wisdom. Like, okay, my wisdom cup's full, can't take anything more. I'm sorry. No, there's no end to it. And you
Mm,
start to see yourself in a different light. And so the image you bear, the things you fear, the lies you believe, and the pain you carry are those things that I call them pathogens, and you have to work those things through. And if you do, obviously, I went very quickly through that, but there's a lot of depth in those four things, and they will affect people. And if they understand those things, there can be such liberty to be free from the pain, to have the right image, to be gone with the lies, and the pain to be healed. I mean, I'm healed. I am healed over some big losses. I don't know a loss more difficult than losing your wife. That
yeah.
was hard, but I'm totally healed, even though I can feel it and remember the
Sure.
pain of the loss, and I'll feel it when I do, but I'm healed and I'm
Mm,
whole. And you can, and people can watching this because there are people that have gone through divorce and whatever it is, they've been through the different kinds of things. And I'm telling you, you're not, you're not that event. You're
mhm.
not the divorce, you're not the divorcee, you're not the bad person or the good person. You're not that. You are not that. You're not the mistake.
Yep.
But I saw myself as this grubby little lion who was still chasing after God, but was hoping he wouldn't kill me in the process.
Right. I think the underlining statement is whatever you're attempting to do, and if you believe that it's what you're supposed to do, and you have confidence that it's the right path forward, that you can make it. You have to have that faith though, and that confidence and that boldness that you belong in the room. And
Yeah.
that's what I've been believing God for. I know a lot of people, but I want strategic relationships in my life. I want to be in rooms where I can add the most value. And God opens, growing up in church, I was told I was going to change the world. God wants to use you to change the world, and that's a lot of pressure. That's kind of like Smokey the Bear telling you only can prevent forest fires. Like that's a lot of pressure for one person. But I realized very quickly is that God wants us to change our world, the people that are around us, and to do everything we can in our power and allow His power to flow through us to be that a change in the lives of the people that we influence. And remember Rick Warren's book, not Rick Warren, Rick Wilkerson wrote a book called The Prayer of Jabez, which Jabez prayed, I believe it was First Chronicles 4. I may be wrong on that, but God,
Bruce Wilkins.
that you would
Yeah.
bless me and expand my territory, and that you would give me greater influence. And if you own a HVAC company, if you own a restaurant, if you own a cleaning company, or you own a manufacturing company, or whatever niche you may be in, that you would just say, God, give me more influence in the area that I'm involved in, and help me be more effective, help me be a better communicator, help me have greater favor with the people that are close to me. And then once that happens, the room gets bigger, and then you meet more people and you meet more people. And I believe
Yeah.
that's how multiplication comes. And I think everybody's trying to hit home runs when, if you're struggling to get sales, I believe your focus should be, let me get the next one. I don't need 10. I just need the next one. And then when I get that one, I need to celebrate like I just got 10. Because if I can get one, I can get 100. If I get 100, I can get
Right.
1,000. And it's again goes back to what we started this whole talk about. It's our attitude. It's about us believing in the plan of God. You believe God had a plan for your life when you started out. You didn't know what that would look like, and if you probably knew all the details in between, you probably would not have gone that direction. You might have said, "There's got to be a better way." That looks pretty
No
scary.
doubt. No
Or
doubt. Well, Adam, listen, let me just say this. If you, meaning the person, anybody watching this, if
yep.
you don't believe in the you, if you don't believe, like at the core, like, do I really have the goods? If you don't believe that, don't expect anybody else to. Don't
Yeah.
show up in the room and think, well, maybe that, hopefully they will, but I don't know, I really don't. They're not going to. You have to believe in on the inside first. You have to believe it on the inside. Believe that God has made you worthy. He has made you, He's equipped you with everything you need. His believers now. It
Mm,
says, I've given you everything you need for life and godliness. He's everything is given to you for life and godliness in Christ Jesus, it says.
mm,
And so you start to replumb or rewire your mind. We've been given a great hardware set. It's
mm.
the software that's got us messed up. We got some viruses in there. We got it
Yeah.
debugged.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I love it. So to wrap it up, one last question. Um, what would you say to somebody who's they run a business, or they're working for somebody else, and they're not making it, and they're feeling the pressure of failure coming on them? What would you tell them to do if you needed to make a certain amount of money, or you needed to do a certain amount of sales to keep the lights on, to stay in business? What would be your first step?
I've done it two ways. And I don't know that it's the same answer every time for everybody,
Mm-hmm.
but in one way I've done it miraculously, and God came through, was when I basically acted like, let me put it this way. I've done it this way for clients. I've said to a client who called me up and said, we weren't clients yet. They were investigating, and it was going to cost thousands of dollars for, just to have some time together. And they're saying, oh, but is it going to help me?
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, that kind of depends. I said, do you have any kids? He said, yep. This is a guy in Plano, Texas. And I said, but they're growing. I said, what, do you have grandkids? He said, yeah, I do. And they're my pride and joy. I take them fishing. I love my grandkids. They're 5 and 7 years old, whatever. Very much loved his grandkids. I said, okay, here's my question. You want to know if what I'm going to do is going to help you? I don't know the answer yet, but let me ask you this. If your grandkids, if you got a call when we hang up that they were kidnapped, And the ransom was you had 90 days or 60 days, whatever I said, to turn your business around, or you would never see them alive again.
Mm.
Would you, A, start planning the funeral, making arrangements, or B, would you turn your business around? He said, I turned my business around. I said, good, then I can help you. Because and by the way, I flew out there and I did help him, and he ended up selling it for millions of dollars and retiring and moving to Florida. That's number one. And he thanked me for it. He's very, very happy.
Yeah,
Okay.
no
But I
doubt.
did change the way they think. So number one, I changed the way you think. Second thing is I've been in that situation where, and I'll give you another example with my business. When I was putting on seminars after 9/11, I started putting on free seminars around the country because I thought people need hope and I'm not going to charge. And I flew out to different cities and I put on the events for free,
Mm.
selling among wolves. And so I was going out to Oklahoma and I spent thousands of dollars, getting there, bringing my staff there, putting on the thing. And all I was selling was books and tapes. I mean, I didn't have a program. I didn't have anything else.
Yeah.
I was just trying to help America. It was just my way of giving to the country. I know it's crazy, but that's what I did.
Mm.
But I knew if I had a few hundred people, I'd probably sell enough stuff to, maybe pay everybody and make a little bit of profit, maybe
Yeah.
even pick up a client. So I'm going out there. The event, the webinar, seminar was, I forget, we'll say it was on a Wednesday.
Mm.
And so I'd fly out on Tuesday and it was Sunday. And I saw a friend of mine from church and out for lunch. And he said, hey, we're chatting. And he asked me how it's going. I said, well, I got this. I'm flying out to Oklahoma City. Going out there on Tuesday. We got the event on Wednesday. And I had somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 people registered. And my radio advertising had ended.
Mhm.
And I was going to be like, bro, I'm upside down. I got nothing else going. So I thought, here's what I'm going to do. I thought, well, I got 100 people who registered. I'm going to call all those 100. I'll get my assistant to do that. We'll call them and offer them, like, if you bring two friends, I'll give you this and this. And I had all this strategy worked out.
Mm.
And then I thought, no, that's not it. I said, God, I'm doing this for you.
Mm.
And I don't know what else to do. So I know it says in the Bible, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. So what I'm going to do on Monday morning, instead of hitting the phones, I'm going to hit the deck. I came into my office, I put on worship music, and I laid on the floor and I worshiped God. And I read the Bible, his word. I didn't know what else to do. I'd been running ads for 3 weeks. I had a total of 100 registrations. Now they're not even running. 2 o'clock or so in the afternoon, I took my first look at what, on my computer, see if I had any email. And I had this thing that said new registration, new registration, new registration, new registration, new registration, new registration. I thought, oh, crumb. Some poor guy kept hitting the submit button, not knowing how to do this.
Right.
But then I looked at it and everyone was a different name.
Wow.
I picked up an extra 200 people. And I thought, I didn't have any idea how it happened until afterwards when I found out that the mayor of Oklahoma City, who I'd never met, didn't know his name or anything, heard about my event and sent out this is before email was really big. He
Mm.
sent out a blast fax to everybody on his list telling them, you need to go to this thing.
Wow.
And it filled up my event.
Mhm.
I just spent my time worshiping the Lord because at that point I'd done everything. And I thought the ideas that I had were very minor. Like they weren't really going to turn the needle. Like I needed more than, hey, please bring a friend,
Yeah.
and I'll give you a book.
I need all your friends.
Yeah. And so in that case, I found, and I've done that many times where I said, you know what? I don't know what else to do. Recently, a year ago, I sold 10,000 books, one of my books, to a university.
Mm.
And they loved the book, but they were going to order them. And but they said, well, I don't know if we're going to get it in time. We may or may not order it, blah, blah, blah. And it came down to, if you don't order them today, they won't be printed in time for the graduation for the 10,000 students. And the person orchestrating this thing texted me or emailed, whatever. And he said, Michael, I'm so sorry to tell you, but we're just not able to pull this off.
Mhm.
We can't do it. Sorry. And it was the end, right? And
Yeah.
so I picked up the paperback edition, okay, something like this,
Mhm.
same book. And I said, Lord, this was your idea.
Yeah.
I didn't want to write the book. I was in church. I was praying. I had a business that was going nowhere. And I said, and the preacher said, instead of asking God to bless what you're doing, why don't you find out what he's doing and what he's blessing and join him? And I thought, well, that's a good idea. God, what are you blessing? And he said, Psalm 68:11. I thought, or 68:10, 68:11. It says, the Lord gave the word and great was the company of them that published it. I thought, you want me to publish your word? What? Give me an idea and I'll do it. Gave me the idea for this book. That's when I published this book. Okay. And so I did it. Of course, as I said, the first one was the leather one, the first version. And so I released, I did this thing. And so the university said, no, I'm sorry, but we have to withdraw. And I said, Lord, this was your idea. I didn't even have it in my head. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't even want to do it. I didn't know how to write a book. I knew nothing. But this was yours. 10,000 students have this book. They're your people, the people that you like. And if I can't do anything else. So if you want them to have it, then you're going to have to talk to the head of the entire university and get him to override somebody else's decision.
Right.
I've done everything. And it wasn't probably 30 minutes before I got another call or another text. Michael, something happened. It's cleared. We need the books. Can you still do it? I said, only if you wire me the money today, which they did. And we filled that order. And then, by the way, they just ordered a week ago, approximately, another 2,000 books for the university. Awesome. So there's a time when it's like, my eyes are on thee. Yeah. I have nothing. I don't know what else to do. There's a time when you say, okay, like, what's the strategy, God? I'll go do that. And there's sometimes when you say, I don't know what else to do. I trust you. Yeah. I don't know what else to do. I'm leaving it in your hands. So that's my answer. Sorry, I don't have short answers.
I like it. I like the long answers. So good. One more thing before we end this. I want you to, a lot of these people that are listening to this they may never heard anything like this before, ever. They may not have known anything we're talking about when we say that God spoke to me or God said this, and it may seem very foreign to them. They may not know what they heard, but they know what they felt when we said it. So I would ask you to pray for the people that listen to this today and to speak a blessing over their business. And it doesn't have to be long or anything, but I guarantee a lot of these folk have never been prayed for in their life. So would you speak a blessing over the people that are listening to this as we wrap this up?
I'd be honored to do that. And first of all, I want to say to those people, I've been on that side of the fence. I understand that. I was a pretty foul-mouthed, cussing little guy. But I met him, and it changed everything. And so I'm going to pray for you. Father, there are men and women watching and or listening to this right now that despite all their unanswered questions and whatever struggles are going on the inside of them and the battles and the warfare and the things, the lies they believe and the pain they carry and the image they bear and things they fear, despite all of that, all the doubts and hesitations, there's something still inside them that is trying to get to the top and reach out and touch and connect with you because they desperately want to know that you are real and that you do love them and that you do have a plan for them and that they matter to you. So, Father, I pray that today you would show them. Let them know how much you do care, how much you do love them, and invite them to put their hope and their trust in you. And Lord, that you would show yourself strong on their behalf and let them know and feel your great love. I ask this in the name of your Savior, your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen and amen. Michael, how can people find more about you? Where do they go?
Well, a couple places. They can go to michaelpink.com, Michael, MichaelPink.com. They can go to sellingamongwolves.com. They can go to jesusschoolofbusiness.com. But if you go to michaelpink.com, it's a good starting point. You go to my blog, go to /blog, you'll see my blog, and you'll see a lot of stuff there. And what I would suggest you do is you sign up to get the blogs. At least that way you'll be on the mailing list and you'll be made aware of all the new events. We do these free training sessions online from time to time. We'll be doing some more on the selling among wolves. I'm working on that right now. If you're on the list, you'll definitely be invited. So go to michaelpink.com. It's probably the quickest and easiest way. You can email me at mpink, M-P-I-N-K at michaelpink.com. Thank
Love
you,
it.
Adam.
You're welcome. And I'll make sure I include all of those links in the description below. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for listening. And I really appreciate you, Michael. And good days are ahead for everybody. I believe that.
Well, thank you. This is the fastest 15 minutes I've done in a while.
I love it. I love it. More to come. More to come. Thank you, everybody, listening. God bless you. We're praying for you. We're cheering you on. We love you. God bless you. Bye bye.